Hi, good morning, everybody. Today's date is June 10th, 2023, and this morning I'm on my way to the city of Paris, Illinois, which is about 90 minutes straight west of where I'm at. And my goal and my mission for today's video is to go to Paris. It's a small little town with about 8,000 people. Not really much to do or see there, although it is kind of beautiful landscape-wise. But my mission is to go there today to show you all the places that are connected or have connections to the early life of child star Carl Dean Switzer, who's better known as Alfalfa from the Our Gang Little Rascal shorts of the 1930s. And so many people on YouTube, they just get on there and they show you all sorts of places that are connected or tied to his tragic and sudden death that happened in January of 1959. Although, you know, my goal for today is I don't want to show you any of that, anything that's grim or morbid, but I want to show you the places that are tied to the first 7 years of his upbringing, which is all the years he lived in Paris, Illinois, before his family relocated to Los Angeles. So that's my goal for today, and I'm excited to do this because I grew up being a big Little Rascals fan, and I still am to this day. So come along with me this morning. I'll show you what I have to show you. Carl Dean Switzer, whom the world would come to know as Alfalfa, was born on August 7th, 1927, in Paris, Illinois. His mother's name was Gladys Carey Shanks, and his father's name was George Fred Switzer. He was the youngest of 4 children. He had an older brother who died at birth on May 18, 1922. In addition, he had another older brother named Harold and an older sister named Janice. From an early age, Harold and Alfalfa became talented and very well-skilled musicians to the point where they were local celebrities. On a trip to visit relatives in Los Angeles in 1934, the Switzer family decided to take a tour of the famous Hal Roach Studios. The movie studio at the time was famous for Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chase, and of course the Our Gang shorts. The family found their way into the studios, open to the public cafeteria. With a guitar in hand, 8-year-old Harold and 6-year-old Alfalfa began an impromptu musical performance. The cafeteria at the time was Hal Roach himself. Roach admittedly was very impressed by the Switzer brothers' performance. On that very same day, both boys were signed to contracts to appear in Our Gang shorts. Initially, they were given the nicknames Slim and Deadpan. Although in their first appearance in 1935's Beginner's Luck, they were given the nicknames Tom and Jerry. This was 5 years prior to MGM's famous Cat and Mouse team that later came into existence. In this short, they were 2 brothers competing against George Spanky McFarlane in a local talent show.
We're cowboys from the mountains. Huh, from the drugstore.
Oh, come now, son. Don't do those things.
All right, boys, follow me. Ladies and gentlemen, the first number on our amateur weekly program will be Tom and Jerry, the Nevada Nightingales.
Arizona.
The Arizona Nightingales.
Oh.
So this is the town square downtown Paris, Illinois, and it was here in the mid and early 1930s where the Switzer boys, including Alfalfa himself, would perform different musical acts and musical concerts for free for the city many times throughout their time here. I have to say it's pretty obvious as if everything has stood still when it comes to time. Just the buildings are outdated, so are the homes. But maybe that's what gives it a little added charm in my opinion. This is a very small cemetery, 15 minutes south of downtown Paris, Illinois, called Loftman Cemetery. So small that there's under 1,000 people buried here. But the reason I'm here is because in this very teeny tiny cemetery are the final resting places of Alfalfa's grandparents, his father Fred's parents. And right over here are Alfalfa's paternal grandparents, his father Fred's parents. On the left is his grandmother Jemima, and on the right side is his grandfather David. At about 15 minutes north of here, maybe 20 minutes max, is the Edgar Cemetery, which is a very gorgeous cemetery. And that is where the rest of his aunts and uncles, who are his father's siblings, are buried. And so are the rest of everyone on his mother's side, his maternal grandparents and his maternal aunts and uncles. And he even has a younger sibling who died at birth, who's also buried up there. So that's our next stop, and it's such a gorgeous place, and I look forward to showing it. After beginner's luck came 1935's Teacher's Bow, where Carl Switzer was officially given the nickname Alfalfa. His brother Harold, on the other hand, lasted very briefly on screen and quickly disappeared. Within a couple of years, Alfalfa rapidly became the most popular star in the Our Gang series. He was beloved for his cowlick, his massive crush on the little leading lady, Darla Hood, and his off-key singing voice. Soon enough, he developed friendships with some of the biggest names in 1930s Hollywood, including Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart.
Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too. Keep the blue lights growing in your arms, so blue. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you.
This is section 7 of the Edgar Cemetery here in Paris. And right here is the unmarked grave of infant son Switzer, who was the eldest brother of Alfalfa, Carl Switzer. And this child died at birth on May 18th, 1922. And I was able to find this through contacting the cemetery's office through the phone, and this is where he's buried. There was never a marker placed for this child, so this is where Alfalfa's eldest brother, who died at birth, is buried. On screen, the character Alfalfa was known as sensitive, eager to please, and hungry for a career in show business. Off screen, Carl Switzer was known as the biggest bully of the Our Gang cast. He often found himself in physical fights with the cast members. In addition, he was one who never took too kindly from directions of adults and the crew members on set. He once chewed up a giant wad of bubblegum and put it in the inside of the gears of a film camera after a cameraman gave Carl a hard time for not remembering his lines. In addition, he once threw a firecracker at the back of Darwood Kay, who played Waldo's father. If anyone ever wondered where the devilish and nasty behaviors of Alfalfa came from, they didn't have to look too far. Spanky McFarlane once said in an interview he was sure Alfalfa's poor behavior came from the lack of attention and structure he got at home from his mom and dad. Like most child stars, Fred and Gladys Switzer saw and viewed their youngest child as the family breadwinner, and they certainly took full advantage of that.
He wasn't liked by too many of the kids.
I remember had some tendencies toward being a bully and maybe pick on some of the younger kids.
This kid was more than a bully. He was a one-man crime wave.
He would step on the other kid's feet. He would take big nails in his pocket and stick it into the other kids. and hit the kids and things like that.
Author Jim Parrish.
He would lose his temper. He was very prone to flying off the handle. If things didn't go right, he would get very irritated. If he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't like you, he would certainly let you know it, and fistfights weren't out of the question for him.
He was very abrasive on the set. Now, that doesn't mean that he wasn't a nice kid. He was just different. He was by himself a lot. He liked to play jokes on people, and frankly, none of us thought it was very funny.
Alfalfa's childhood pranks were not reserved only for his co-stars.
My dad told me that one time Alfalfa threw a firecracker at him as he was walking away, and it exploded, you know, right by his back, and he didn't appreciate that.
When a cameraman wanted to go to lunch, and Alfalfa or one of the kids was having trouble with a line, and the cameraman said something like, oh, come on, can't you get this right? Let's go to lunch.
He got very peeved. And so to show how peeved he was, when they did take a break, he got all his friends to start chewing up gum. They made it into a great big wad.
Alfalfa had this big wad of gum, opened up the camera, and spread this gum all throughout the gears. That afternoon, nobody worked except the cameraman.
On one occasion, Alfalfa shocked everyone with his most revolting stunt.
One time, I understand, I wasn't really there that day, but I understand that he kind of urinated on one of the lights.
When they came in to that stage that day and turned on those lights, and the lights heated up, it caused a terrible stench.
And everybody had to get out of the stage because they couldn't stand the smell.
What, Alfalfa?
Alfalfa's knack for wreaking havoc invited threats from one frustrated director.
George Sidney, at age 21 or 22, was only a few years older than the oldest kid. And Alfalfa was causing trouble as usual, and Sidney killed the cameras and called Alfalfa over and said to him, Carl, I want you to tell me something. I said, when you're 21, look me up, I said, because I'm going to slug you. You run out hitting people. I'm going to take care of you. You come back at 21.
This is the former Switzer household that the family lived in from Alfalfa's birth up until their relocation to Los Angeles in 1934. According to Ancestry.com, this was a rented house that the family rented from their landlord. Alfalfa's final Our Gang appearance came in 1940's Kitty Cure. From there, Carl Switzer's film career started to decrease and dry up. He made occasional appearances in low-budget films in the 1940s and 50s, but also had very minor non-speaking roles in such movies as The Defiant Ones with Tony Curtis and It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. He was married in 1953, and the union did produce a son, Justin Lance Switzer, but soon enough the marriage ended in divorce. For extra income while attempting to keep his film career alive, Carl worked as a bartender in Studio City, California, and as a hunting guide for celebrities. So what were the events that led up to Carl Switzer's demise? While working as a hunting guide, he borrowed a dog from a man by the name of Moses Bud Stilts. The dog one day ran off and disappeared into the woods as it was chasing a bear. After taking out ads in local newspapers in aid of finding the dog, a few days passed and a man found the dog. There was a cash offer of $50 for the dog's reappearance. When the man and the dog turned up at the bar where he worked, Alfalfa paid the man $35 in cash, but gave him $15 in free drinks. Once he was out $50, Switzer was furious. He also felt Moses Stilts needed to repay him back for the money. On the evening of January 21st, 1959, Switzer showed up armed with a knife to the Stilts house in the Mission Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles and demanded to be repaid for the money. When he refused, Carl pulled the knife out at Stilts and threatened to kill him. In an act of self-defense, Moses retrieved a pistol and fired once at Switzer, which struck him in the groin. An ambulance was summoned, but before he made it to the emergency room, Carl Alfalfa Switzer had died. He was eventually buried in the world-famous Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where his brother and his father would be buried alongside him throughout the next 10 years. Charges would be dropped against Moses Stilts as he was found to be acting in self-defense. Alfalfa's killer would later pass away in 1983 at the age of 62.
He borrowed a dog
a hunting dog from a friend of his, a welder named Bud Stilts. Dog ran off, and he put up a reward of $35. And somebody found the dog and brought it in, and Alfie bought him a couple of drinks. And by the time the reward and the drinks were factored in, he was out $50.
Alfalfa, when he was unhappy, would turn to drinking, and during these last days, he'd been drinking, brooding over this $50.
He got it in his head that the money that he had spent to retrieve this dog was owed to him by the dog's owner.
Alfalfa called Bud Stilts and demanded to be paid back the $50. Stilts, of course, refused.
So Alfalfa one day, getting very hot-tempered because things were not going his way and was his wont, rushed over to his ex-partner's house in North Hollywood, banged on the door and said, "I want my $50, I want my $50. Barged into the house and then started claiming, "You give me this money or I'm going to kill you."
He takes out a knife, switchblade knife. About that time, Stilts comes out holding the gun. By this time, Alfie is just seeing blood, and he threatens him with the knife, and Stilts didn't screw around and shot him, and down he went. And by the time the ambulance came and took him, hauled him off to the hospital, he had bled to death. He was gone. January 22nd, 1959, that Alfie, Carl Switzer, died. Unfortunately, it happened to be the same day that Cecil B. DeMille died. Alfie's obit got a little box down in the corner, and Cecil B. DeMille got pages and pages and pages. And it seems like he got screwed even in death.
5 days after Alfalfa's slaying, Bud Stilts appeared before a coroner's jury. The jury ruled Stilts acted in self-defense, and all criminal charges were dropped. Alfalfa was buried in Hollywood Memorial Park Cemetery.
On Alfalfa's stone, there's a dog, and people that go there think that's Pete the Pup from the gang. But it was because he used hunting dogs. That's what it was. That was the connection. And somebody, I think, had defaced it and put a ring around the dog's eye.
Thank you for watching today's video. It means so much to me. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to hit that subscribe button too for more future content to come. Until next time.